another episode of the Mind to Lead podcast. And today I am really excited because I've been following this wonderful woman on LinkedIn for quite a while now. I've loved all of her posts, and I think we've got a lot of similar values and things that we're going to talk about today, that we're going to be on the same wavelength. So Mariya, amazing to have you on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. And I should record that introduction and use it every time whenever I speak or run a webinar because you introduced me so beautifully.
Oh, well, I mean it. I mean, I have generally been following your work. I think you write beautifully. I love everything that you say. So I want to definitely just dive into lots of things today. But for the audience who don't know who you are, could you just give a brief sort of introduction overview into who Mariya is and what sort of brought you to this point in your journey right now?
Oh, Mariya is someone who kept grinding for over 3 decades, juggling a lot of things, various careers and degrees and other things. Someone who slept maybe 3, 4 hours a night if lucky.
Mm.
Someone coming from a family of medical practitioners completely neglected her health.
Mm-hmm.
And it did lead to a major burnout a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And my second Tedx talk was about that. So my goal is to find out in particular what's happening in regards to things like anxiety and depression and burnout, and to find a solution, a long-term solution, how to resolve in particular these mental health issues.
Mm.
Yeah. Well,
Amazing.
burnout is also physical as well, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think right now in the world that's needed now more than ever, because I'm sure you've been reading the same reports that I have saying that, 1 in 4 people are depressed and anxious and have got mental health. And with the whole pandemic, through the isolation, the second wave isn't going to be another, well, it might be another outbreak, but it's also going to be a huge toll on people's mental health. So I think what you're doing right now is really important. So I mean, where do we even begin with when it comes to mental health, I guess? But, let's talk about, I guess, why you are so passionate. You just mentioned there about your own experience with burnout. You were sleeping 3 to 4 hours, a night. Where did it all start for you, the passion with mental health?
Well, for me, it started with a lot of people coming to me. In particular, a lot of international students reach out to me, and I see the same problems happening, in particular, them roller coasting between anxiety and depression and burning themselves from both ends and leading themselves to burnout, already have fallen into a burnout. So I just realized what a huge, huge, huge problem that is. And even before COVID, depression was already number one mental health issue in the world. And what concerns me is that the majority of people and the majority of organizations, they work on creating awareness and they work on offering short-term solutions. So basically, you know, offering band-aids, and both are incredibly important. It's crucial to increase awareness about how bad the situation is. It's very important to help people that already found themselves severely depressed or experiencing severe anxiety or burnt out. It's very, very important. But unfortunately, very few, go up the river to see why people fall into the river in the first place. So this is my mission, to get to the bottom of things, to connect the dots, to understand what exactly is happening and how to resolve it.
Amazing. What an absolutely incredible mission. And I guess speaking from my own experience for a second, I struggled really badly with anxiety in my 20s, and it wasn't until, you're right, you just said the pinpoint. It wasn't until I pinpointed actually that where my anxiety came from, and a lot of it was not feeling that I was enough, not feeling that I was doing things to the best of my ability. I was a perfectionist. I put so much pressure on myself to always be performing at this top level. Then I started to sacrifice my sleep and my nutrition, and it was kind of a bit of a downward spiral from there. And thankfully I kind of woke up and figured it all out. But there's a lot of people who go down this path, like you say, fall into the river and don't get out again. So in your experience from the research that you found so far, is there a trend? Is there something that is happening as like a common pattern of why people start to spiral down into these, mental disorders?
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons, but I think one of the major reasons is that we have an incredibly stressful life.
Mm.
It's Scientists say that even if we compare lives to those who lived, let's say, 500 years ago, the amount of stress that we get these days, it's just one day, is more than stress that people were getting within their entire life 500 years ago. And our brain is just not accustomed to it because evolution happens very, very, very slowly.
Mm.
So the amount of stress increased so drastically, but the way our brain functions stayed nearly the same. So we're just not prepared, we're not educated, we're not aware about how we function psychologically and physiologically. And this is one of the reasons that we don't know how to protect ourselves from
Mm.
stresses that come our way and we just
Mm.
get bombarded. I call them cocktails of stress. I
Mm.
compare it to the life called bartender giving us those cocktails of stress cocktails. And we can get different cocktails, so we can get the same cocktail, but we're going to react differently because we are very different.
Mm.
So in order to make it better, it's very important at the same time to reduce the amount of stress that we expose ourselves to and work on building our resilience. So
Mm.
if we work on both, this is where things get better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amazing. And in your maybe your own experience or your advice or what you've seen from working with clients, like what are some of the ways that we can get better at managing stress in our lives?
Yeah. First thing is just to be educated about what types of stress we do encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, lack of sleep is a major stress. Or us binge watching TV dramas is another
Mm.
type of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Being exposed to Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, other signals is huge, huge, huge stress.
Mm-hmm.
Not eating properly, multitasking, allowing people who suck energy out of us to remain in our
Mm-hmm.
life, that's another type of
Mm-hmm.
stress. So there's just so many different types of stress that we encounter these days that, for example, even I myself did not encounter when I was younger. So, like in my 20s, I wasn't using any social media platforms. I wasn't using Facebook, wasn't there then. And I didn't use anything similar to that. I wasn't on my mobile phone all the time. I
Mm.
actually used my mobile phone just to receive and make calls. you know,
Yep.
I didn't text at the time. So, mobile phone itself and what's happening on the mobile phone, that's like a
Mm.
whole laundry list of other types of stresses that we encounter these days.
Mm.
So we really need, it's not just about that, our grandparents didn't experience those type of stresses or our parents did not experience them when they were our age. There's so many stresses that even we did not experience 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago ourselves. So we need to be educated about those types of stresses. I don't know
Mm.
what else to call them because this is what they are.
Mm.
And once we become aware how different things affect us on both physiological and psychological level,
Mm.
then we can start working on reducing them and eliminating or decreasing them in our life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I read a study, I think it's like the average person picks up their phone like 60, I don't even know, it was such a crazy number. It's 60,000 times a day or so. Like it was like maybe that's less because they would just constantly would put their phone down, but like hundreds of times a day or something. No, that's how many thoughts we had. People have over 60,000 thoughts a day, but they were picking up their phone like just constantly all the time throughout the day. And I think that you've touched on something that's really important that I've preached as well, and that's awareness. I think when we're aware of something, we can begin to make changes. So in terms of like how would you even go about breaking the habit? Because I think we are a society, and I'll put my hand up and say this as well, that we are addicted to technology. We rely on our phones. Like how do you go about managing your stress? If you got any tips for people who are like maybe sitting there listening to this now and go, God, yeah, I am feeling a bit stressed, I am feeling a bit overwhelmed, I do have a busy life. Like how have you kind of eliminated some of the stress from your life?
Yeah. For everyone, it will be different journey because, like I said, even if we get the same amount of same types of stresses and in the same amount, every person would react differently. So what's stressful for one person could be not that stressful for another person. So it's a very unique journey for every one of us to find out what's affecting us and to try to decrease it or to eliminate it from our life. So I would say that, getting proper sleep, this is advice number one in regards to everything. Whether we want to be more resilient physically or mentally, trust me, getting proper sleep, and it means enough of it and proper quality of it. This is the go-to thing. This is the very first thing that everyone should do and can do to address that. But also, with mobile phone, when mobile devices were invented, when they were introduced to the market, actually those devices were not supposed to be used probably for more than 1 hour a day. And now it feels like we're 24/7 on it.
Yep.
It's constantly by our bed, it's constantly in our hand, and actually the research shows that if someone loses their mobile phone, they see it as a nearly death experience.
Yeah.
This is how attached we are to those mobile devices. So one of the things is to be quite particular about for how many hours and how you use your mobile phone. Because if you just reduce it to making and giving phone calls, that's going to be a very different experience from if you use Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and you use LinkedIn and WhatsApp and Skype, and other things on it, and you read books on that,
And
and
podcasts
you Absolutely. Yes. So it could be one of the solutions. It could be just to make a decision that, for example, I'm using Facebook and LinkedIn only when I'm in front of my computer and only within those particular hours, that I'm not on those platforms, that I'm not on social media platforms nearly, what feels like every minute of every hour.
Yeah.
So it's very important to make a decision that, yes, I want to feel better. I want to distress my life. And I know that being on social media platforms, for example, of course, we all have very different feed and we use platforms differently. But we need to identify for ourselves how is it affecting us and how to reduce that amount of time that we spend on mobile phones.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's really interesting because I have become more aware of how much I am using my phone. And I guess one tip that I started to do, because when I started working from home, and I've worked from home now for the last year, I was like, I'm eliminating the commute stress, right? So that's gone. But what I actually found was I was actually almost feeling a little bit more exhausted by the end of the day, is because I was just not switching off, because I had the tendency to go, just send one more email, or I'll do one more post. And I think how important would you say are the boundaries that we make with technology? Should there be, because it's impacting our sleep, and I agree with you 100%. I think sleep is absolutely number one, and sleep isn't sexy, right? People go, I want to grow a business, I want to do this, so I'm going to sacrifice my sleep, and sleep's the first thing to go. And it is the most important. So when it comes to that link between sleep and technology and those boundaries there, when do you think we should switch off from technology? Do you think there should be is there any science backed here? Because I know the whole blue light and things on your phone. So any sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would recommend, I know it's not possible for everyone, but I would recommend not to touch mobile phone between 6 p.m. and midday.
Right.
So give yourself that window, in particular, because after 6 p.m., we need to prepare to go to sleep. We need to unwind ourselves. Our brain doesn't work like this when it comes to sleep. Those evening routines, we need to have an evening routine.
Yep.
Unfortunately, so many people talk about morning routines, but not enough people talking about evening routines, which I believe is actually even more important. So starting from 6 p.m., we need to start doing things that unwind us, go for a walk, have a light dinner, spend time with people who bring us joy, read a book, I don't know, put a puzzle together. So doing things for yourself, things that recharge you, that will charge you up. And in the morning, I think it's important not to be glued to the mobile phone, because morning hours are the most precious.
Yeah.
This is when we have, we just started tapping into our decision-making energy, and we still have our willpower in
Mm.
comparison to, how it gets reduced towards the evening hours.
Mm.
So in the morning, we should really focus on long-term goals, and we need to do things towards achieving those long-term goals instead of, putting up urgent and non-urgent fires.
Mm.
So if we put the mobile phone away and we don't look at it till midday, we can have that few hours in the morning to fully focus on where we're going, what's our vision, what's our mission, what are our goals, and make effort towards reaching those
Mm.
goals
Yeah.
in the long run instead of, you know, spending yourself, wasting your time and effort
Yeah.
on short-term things that usually can wait, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Absolutely.
also very important to audit your circle. I'm a strong believer that it's very, very important to look into your circle. Who are the people that surrounding us? And I break our circle into 5 groups. And one of those groups is people who we feel ambivalent about. And what happens when we have people in our life who we feel ambivalent about? We usually keep them
Yeah.
around, yeah,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
still making a decision and they didn't really do anything usually bad for us to say
Mm.
goodbye to them. So
Hmm.
they hang around, but it's been proven that that's the ambivalent people that actually affect us negatively the most.
Wow.
It's not those people who are obviously negative, it's actually
Mm.
people who are ambivalent,
Right.
who we're still making decision about. They're the
Mm.
ones who suck most energy out of us, to be honest. And this is the group of people that should really go first.
Why isn't that fascinating? Why is that? Is there any research to why that is?
I think it's because our brain likes shortcuts. And when we have someone in our life, our brain decides whether, in particular, we trust that person or not, whether we like that person or not. So what happens with an ambivalent person is that we can't make decision. So whenever we interact with them, our brain, goes on alert
Mm.
because it's still trying to make a decision.
Mm.
Are we friends with that person or not? Like, what
Mm.
are their intentions towards us? Are they trustworthy or not? So we spend so much mental energy on processing all the information that comes from that ambivalent person that it's really it's a waste of our energy, honestly.
Right. I had never thought about that before like that. And it's really interesting that you just touched upon like, your inner circle because I do believe like, the people you surround yourself with is really, really important. And especially if you do have a goal, especially if you are trying to, be a better person or, whatever, because it's so true. Like you want to be around people who support you, who build you up. And I always say, like there's enough abundance in the world for everyone. Like we don't need to be, envious of our friends or, jealous of our colleagues. Like, there's so much, there's enough in the world for everyone. But I think that it's that scarcity mentality where people go, oh, if they're doing well, then that means there's less for me. And actually, no, there is enough for everybody. But so if you were somebody right now listening to this and thinking, well, maybe I'm not around the right types of people, any advice that you would give to people who want to start, making new acquaintances, new friends, surround themselves with more positive people, where would you begin to make that journey?
Yeah. For me, you see, I grew up in a culture where if you make friends, you think that you're going to be friends for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what is it they do, whether they betray you or treat you disrespectfully, um, you should stick around and you
Mm.
should forgive them. Or
Mm.
in any case, like if you made a friend, you stay a friend forever. So
Yeah.
this is how I was brought up. This is how I grew up, and I kept forgiving, and
Mm.
letting people do certain things and
Mm.
self-sacrificing. And every time I thought, maybe I should part ways with that person, for some reason, I saw it back then as me being disloyal.
Mm.
Until I got that one friend that really, really
Mm.
got very disrespectful towards me in front of other people. And this is where I came across a quote saying that if you're not losing your friends, you're not growing.
Wow. Okay.
And this is where it hit me. And one of the
Mm.
things that I realized is that, hang on, I'm thinking that if I part ways with that person, that I'm being disloyal to them. What
Mm.
about me?
Yeah.
If I don't do that, it means I'm disloyal to myself. So what's more important? Especially if
Mm.
that person doesn't appreciate me, if they don't value time and effort and energy that I offer to them, if they don't appreciate having me in their life, you know, if someone
Mm.
doesn't appreciate your presence, trust
Mm.
me, give them gift of your absence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. God, I love that quote. So if you're say that again, the friends quote that
If
if
you're
you're
not losing your friends,
friends,
you're not
you're not growing.
growing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think there's a lot of people who would have your mentality of that, my friends are for life. I grew up with these people, they know me, and it's really hard because, again, it's stepping out of our comfort zone. It's having the courage to meet new people. I guess it's not an easy thing to do. But then, like you just said, you've got to, I guess, honor yourself and love yourself enough to put you first. And on that note, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Like, how important do you think it is to honor yourself, to love yourself, and to put yourself as the priority each day? Is that part of the, you talk about building an amazing human? Is that sort of the foundation there, like putting yourself first each day?
Yes, I will
Mm-hmm.
definitely answer that question. I
Mm-hmm.
just really would love to add something to the previous
Yeah,
part of the
please do.
conversation.
Yeah.
Is that one of the things is that when it comes to relationships with other people, that's the depth of those connections that's important. It's not about
Mm,
how many people we have in our life, it's about
yeah.
how well we know them and what's the quality of that connection with them.
Mm,
And once again, research shows that at the time, we can have more or less proper relationships with only up to 150 people.
right.
So it's just the way we operate as human beings, the way our brain works in particular, is that we need to choose who to let go in order to let another person in
Mm,
within that 150 people circle.
mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So doing a
But
bit of a cull, maybe, sitting down with your list. It's like doing a wedding list, no, not inviting them, not having them.
yeah, we do grow apart.
Yeah.
We grow at very different speeds and we interested in different things and we have
Yeah.
very different visions. And,
Mm,
if you were great friends with someone 5 years ago, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that, you're destined to be friends with them
mm,
now. And, one of the things we see, for example, a lot of marriages fell apart after 20-year marriage. And, you
mm,
would have thought people were together for 20 years. How's that they're
mm,
getting divorced now? But what
mm,
happens is that every 5 years we change um, about like 25%. Our character changes about
mm,
25%. So after 20 years, if you know someone for 20 years, most likely you're next to a person who's completely different to a person who you
mm,
met 20 years ago. So this is the main reason I think why some marriages fell apart after 20 something years, because both people become very, very different people and they no longer have same values, same priorities, same vision, same lifestyle.
mm,
So it's very important to identify, when it's time to let someone go. And even
mm,
if you let someone go, it doesn't mean that they're not going to come back into your life.
yeah.
It could be periods of time where, maybe they deviate and they start chasing something else. For
Mm,
example, maybe for you, it could be giving value to
mm,
your clients and your contacts and your
mm,
audience. This is the priority for you. But for
mm,
another person, it could be chasing money,
yeah.
making profits. So that's the priority number one for them.
Mm,
So if you have those two different priorities, it doesn't matter how much you adore each other, it doesn't matter
mm,
how well you click with each other. If your priorities and values do not align, you're
mm,
going to start pulling that cart into different directions.
mm,
So no collaboration is going to take place in that
yeah.
case. But maybe after 10 years, that person's value will change again.
Mm,
Maybe they will start pursuing those things that you pursue. So maybe you'll get back together and maybe you'll work
mm,
on some sort of a project or
mm,
just become, you know, friends,
mm,
or they become your buddy to go for a walk, for
mm,
example.
yeah.
When we have friends, we can do different things with them and spend time
Mm,
with them differently. Um, And yeah, like I said, if you let someone go, it could be letting them go to pursue their dreams. And after some time, it's absolutely possible to come into each other's lives again. So it is important to make that audit probably once a year, I would
Yeah.
say. Maybe before Christmas time is really good, or now is a perfect time
Yeah.
to audit your circle.
Yeah. Well, if it was a
Yeah.
Christmas time, you could save some money on some presents, couldn't you? So that would be good.
Haven't thought about that, but yes.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
it's a,
Well, you also
it's
just
a,
touched on another thing there about values, and I think that all links in beautifully to the whole, self-love, self-care piece as well. So, I talk about values, and I guess I love your thoughts on this, but I guess the way I see values is kind of like our internal compass. And when we are in alignment with our values, we go for things that actually bring us joy. Whereas, when we are off, we're not living by our values, we can kind of feel a little bit unfulfilled and not sort of sure what direction we're heading in. So, how important are understanding our values and what's important to us for a happy, stress-free life?
yeah. Well, one of the things, as we already discussed, if we want to create a strong friendship or any
Mm,
type of relationship, even when employees are looking for new employees, the
mm,
very first thing that they're looking at is person's values.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because in particular that case, if you hire someone, you can upskill them.
Mm,
But to change their values or priorities, it's a very, very, very different and
mm,
difficult journey. And
yeah.
it's going to take a lot of time to try to transform that person. And that's provided that they actually want to transform.
Mm,
So, when we want to have a proper relationship, and whatever type of relationship it is, if we know what our values are and we know what values of that other person is, only then we can create that deep connection with that
mm,
person.
mm-hmm.
And another reason why values are so important is because we're constantly bombarded with so many things,
Mm,
and it's becoming more and more difficult to make decisions probably about everything in our
mm-hmm.
life. So when we have values, when we have priorities, when we have clear goals, it helps us to identify what is a distraction
Mm-hmm.
and what is actually an opportunity that's going to
Mm,
contribute on our journey towards that goal.
mm-hmm.
So it really helps to have that clarity, what's important to us and where we're going. It really helps us with decision making, probably in
Mm,
regards to everything, but in particular business wise.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And how can people go about understanding their values? How would they discover that?
I think it's a very individual journey. It's
Mm,
something that everyone has to discover for themselves. There are certain things that no one can do for you.
mm,
And it's one of those things, to identify what is it important to you, what's going
mm,
to make you fulfilled, what's going to make you happy.
mm-hmm.
So maybe someone can help you by asking questions, but at the end of the day, it's going to be your work. It's going to be your responsibility, your job to identify what's important to you and what makes your life, happy and healthy and fulfilled.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you there. And see, this is all tying in beautifully, I guess, because I believe that self-awareness is the first step to self-mastery. I believe that when you understand who you are, when you have a deep relationship and understanding with who you are, then everything else makes sense. You start to attract the right things into your life, the right people, the right opportunities, but it all stems down from that self-awareness, that self-belief, and that self-love. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Like, how important is it to really understand yourself, but not only just understand yourself, but just honor yourself, believe in yourself, and love yourself enough to take the first step to getting rid of those friendships, to taking the first step to sort of starting something new. Like, how important is that piece in our journey?
I think it's the most important piece. I think that's the most
Mm,
important work that you can do for yourself as an individual
mm,
and as a society overall.
mm,
I'm convinced that whatever global problems in particular we're talking about, whether it's poverty, hunger, depression, pollution, all of lives matter, all Black lives matter,
mm,
whatever that is, if an average person becomes self aware and empowered And if they understand how they function, and if they become patient toward themselves, if they start self-respecting, and if they start exercising self-love and self-care, this is when they're going to start treating others the same way, you know.
Completely agree.
So it's about, I think it should start with educating all of us, and for a person to understand that if I want to change the world, I've got to start with a person in a mirror, like, as Michael Jackson sang
Yes,
so
yeah,
many years ago.
yeah,
And as so many philosophers have been telling us for thousands
yeah,
of years, that you want to change the world, start with yourself. You want to
yeah,
change your life, start with yourself. It's all
yeah.
comes from within.
Mm,
And I would like to highlight it again. Whatever global problem we're talking about, if an average person, if the majority of us become self-aware and empowered and understand how we function, all
mm,
problems are going to go away, because we're
mm,
also going to become loving and caring and patient and understanding
mm,
towards each other and towards
mm,
our environment overall.
mm, mm. I just think that is so so powerful, and yeah, such a key message, I think, for people to, if they are listening to this now, to really take away. Because I guess I can speak from experience here as well, that it wasn't until I really took the time to understand who is Georgie, what does Georgie want, what makes Georgie happy, that I realized that I was in a job that didn't fulfill me, that I was living in uh, a city when I wanted to live in nature, like there was all these things that I was constantly chasing things, and were then wondering why these things weren't making me happy. And I think we do need to go more inwards than outwards. And yeah, I just think that's such a key point in people's journey. So it just I love your thoughts on how would somebody, if they're sitting there right now and they're like, oh, I'd love to sort of maybe start to understand myself a little bit more. Is there any practices? Is there anything that somebody could do, or start just to help them along the way of this journey?
Yeah, such a vast topic.
I know. But if you could
Yes.
just pick like one or two things that you found that has worked in your journey, what would they be?
Yeah. One of the main life lessons and best advices I've ever got was to treat everything in life as an experiment.
Mm.
And you mentioned that through your 20s you were perfectionist, and I was too, by the
Yeah.
way. And it's because we are taught that somehow failure is opposite to success. But
Yeah.
actually, whatever mistakes we make, whatever failures we come across, it is all part of success. And this is what we need to
Mm.
understand, that we should be focusing on progress, not on perfection.
Mm.
And just treat life as a one huge experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer believe that there is a big plan.
Mm-hmm.
I used to think that. I used to think that I was predestined for something, or that the universe, God, had some sort of a master plan. But now, the more research, the more I think about it, I realize that actually, whether you call it God or universe,
Mm.
whatever way you see it, I think it's all big experiment,
Mm.
and it's all about experiencing life and about
Mm.
growth. So
Mm.
the main goal is growth.
Mm.
It's not about reaching a certain destination, it's about growing. So that's one of the things that really helped me to breathe easier, to understand that, either if I win or I learn, there's no such thing, to be honest, as
Mm.
failing, or whatever mistake we made or anything like that. We should really see it as part of our learning and part of our growing and part of our success journey.
Mm.
And once we realize it, we feel more courageous and we
Mm.
sleep better,
Yeah.
and we feel freer.
Mm.
And it's really, really helps to realize that. And another major life lesson that I learned, and I wish those things were taught at school, honestly. I think
Yeah.
they should be taught in kindergarten.
Totally
Um,
agree.
it's something that you also mentioned, that you kept chasing things and
Mm.
then you would achieve it or get it and it wouldn't bring you happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I was exactly the same. I thought,
Mm.
oh, happiness lies with my next career or with my next
Yeah.
degree or with my next relationship or,
Mm.
with my dad's approval or with
Mm-hmm.
me getting a car or this or
Mm-hmm.
that. So most of my life I was chasing things and people's approval, not people's approval, but my dad's approval. Let's put it this way, my dad's approval.
Yeah.
Um, and I attached a lot of happiness to my romantic relationships. So
Mm.
for a very long time, I thought that, oh, I can't be happy if I'm not in a relationship, in a romantic relationship. But now I understand that happiness is just an accumulation of joys.
Mm.
So it's not about major things at all. It's not about what kind of car you drive or, um, what careers you have or what
Mm-hmm.
businesses you build. Happiness
Mm-hmm.
is not about that. It's actually about little things, like enjoying a cup of coffee in the morning or having a
Yes.
conversation with a friend,
Yeah.
or coming across an exciting episode of a podcast like this one. Or yeah, reading an article, listening to a
Yeah.
Tedx talk, going for a walk for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
coming out of the house and realizing that, oh my God, the sun is shining and the
Yeah.
sky is so blue today.
Mm.
So when we start paying attention when we start paying attention to little things
Mm.
and when we start enjoying moments and experiences, this is where life changes. This is
Mm.
where we create happiness. And happiness is that. Happiness is
Mm.
something you create. And I don't know if you saw my post, I compared happiness to baking a cake.
No, I didn't see that one. I'm going to go and search for that one though. That sounds like one that I definitely want to read.
So I was just explaining that, we all like different cakes.
Yeah.
And happiness for everyone is also a bit different. Things that bring us joy are very different as well.
Mm.
Like for me, for example, I love painting. It's one of the things that brings me joy.
Mm.
But for another person, it could be something absolutely irrelevant. For them,
Yeah.
it could be skateboarding, for example. But I don't skateboard, so
Mm.
it's not something. It's not a component to my happiness,
Mm.
per se. So our happinesses are different, like cakes are.
Mm.
So someone wants a mud cake, and
Mm.
someone wants, millefeuille, and someone
Yeah.
wants, I don't know, some sort of a whipped cream pavlova is a
Yeah.
type of a dessert. So happiness is different, like cakes.
Yeah.
But what's important is that when it comes to dessert, we can get it or we can buy it. We can receive
Mm.
it. But happiness is something that we need to create within ourselves. So you create it within yourselves with what you already have. And
Mm.
if you learn to enjoy little things and experiences, trust me, you'll enjoy bigger things as well.
Yeah.
Um, so this is what's very important to understand.
Wow, that was just so beautifully put. I mean, I honestly, I completely agree with everything you just said. And it always makes me laugh, when you ask people like the 5 whys, why do you want this, why do you want that, why do you want this, why do you want that, it's all just they want to be happy. So I'm just like, well, why wait? Why not wake up every day? And and I think the key as well, and yeah, I'm sure you probably would agree with this, but it's gratitude, right? It's appreciating the moments. It's being present. It's not having your cup of coffee thinking about the email that you've got to send, or watching the sunset thinking that, oh, I've got to do all that today. It's just being really present in those beautiful moments that we get. And that's happiness. It is in those key life moments. It's not when you get the promotion. It's not when you buy the new car or the new house. I mean, yes, they do bring you some form of happiness, but it's fleeting. And if you're constantly chasing those big moments and you miss the opportunities just to really sit and appreciate life, then you're going to go through life feeling, not happy, not in a higher state all the time. And unfortunately, I just think we do see that a lot in our society. Because I know myself, I've been there. I was there throughout my whole 20s thinking, when I get this, I'll be happy. When this happens, I'll be happy. And I got there and, no, I wasn't any happier. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting. And I could talk about that topic all day long because it's something I'm so passionate about, but also conscious of your time. So, look, for the people that are listening, if you could impart, I love just your life lessons there, but one piece of advice that you would give somebody who maybe is struggling right now. I mean, we're in a very unique time in history. There's the pandemic, there's Black Lives Matters, there's lots of things going on right now, and we're still trying to navigate through our own lives. Like, what advice would you give to those people who are sat at home listening to this right now, and maybe they're struggling, maybe they're not happy, maybe they're feeling a little bit anxious or depressed? Like, speak to them right now. What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I keep hearing very often is people saying something like, oh, I can't wait for things to go back to normal. I can't wait for the new normal. But the truth is that our life has become very unpredictable. And it's not just about the last few months. Even before that, our life already became so fast-paced and so unpredictable that it all comes down to focusing on upskilling yourself. It's not about trying to predict what's coming. There's just too many scenarios now that can, unroll from here. So it's not about trying to predict anything, but it's about upskilling yourself. So whatever comes, you will adapt, you'll manage. So it's all about shifting that focus onto yourself. And in particular, being happy, I think it's a skill. It starts as a choice, and then it turns into a habit, and then it actually does become a skill. And the most important thing to realize that it's your responsibility to make yourself happy. Because one of the things is that when we attach that happiness to a person or to a thing, we're giving away that power, to them to make us happy. Why would we give away that power? It should be ours. And the other thing is that our brain is not designed to make us either healthy or happy or wealthy or successful or whatever that is. Our brain is designed just to keep us intact physically, to survive physically. So it doesn't do anything to make you happy or healthy. And it's once again, it is your responsibility to make that decision, whether you want to become happier and healthy and start working towards it. And there's a huge misconception that if we want to make a change in our life, it means we need to do something grand, that we're going to acquire it through pressure. Once again, doesn't matter what we're talking about, whether wealth or health or happiness, anything else. It's all about consistent efforts. And in particular with happiness, our brain doesn't understand the difference between little things and big things. So in order to feel happy, it's about consistently experiencing joys. It's not about experiencing some joy once a year about something big. It's about how many little joys you get in particular on a daily basis. So the more joys you have, and it doesn't matter what they are. It could be just you stopping, and smelling a flower. It could be that. It could be just those little things. If you consistently let yourself enjoy things, little things, it will build up, and it will turn into overall happiness.
Mariya, I just couldn't have said that any better myself. Thank you so much. I mean, there's so many incredible takeaways for people listening. I think it's just been such a beautiful conversation. So thank you so much. For people wanting to reach out to you after this, where should they go? Where can they find you?
I would say LinkedIn and Instagram are the best way to find me and follow me and get in touch with me. So yes, please find me on LinkedIn or Instagram.
But not between 6 p.m. and 12 a.m. the next day. So don't expect a response. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And when I'm next in Melbourne, when all of this is over, let's grab a coffee, because I could speak to you all day. You're absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Mind to Lead podcast. I really hope you got some great takeaways and key learnings from this episode. To help us spread the message, please give us a rating and leave us a review. We love reading your thoughts and your insights and your learnings. And look, reach out to me. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Georgie Hubbard. Reach out to me on Instagram. I'm Georgie L. Hubbard. Let's connect. I hope you have an incredible day, and I look forward to speaking to you all again soon.